Hello and welcome to our home for a short message this morning. Since we're all in lockdown, and I don't know about you, but I'm not enjoying it very much, I thought we might put the kettle on, have a cup of tea and just have a short message this morning. You might want to press pause, go out and put the kettle on and come back with your cuppa. So, there's been much talk, and rightly so, of invoking the wartime spirit. And as British citizens, that means pulling together, putting the kettle on, seeing each other through, make, do and mend, plant the veggies, I've planted runner beans, and seeing each other side by side through a crisis. And it's exactly what we're doing, with one difference: social distancing, which is tough, really tough. We naturally, as a nation, come together to celebrate or commemorate. We don't go further apart. Our natural instinct as a society is to get closer together, which is why it was so wonderful last night to stand in the street and watch our neighbours banging pots of pans, rattling, shouting and clapping, and feeling that we were doing something together. But social distancing is making things very difficult. We must stay at home. Look like a school teacher saying it, but we must stay at home. But how does that work with our natural instinct to be a community close to each other? We must find new ways to sense togetherness. We must find new ways to be connected without being collected. The internet is coming into its own. It's a great connecting force, from FaceTiming grandma, hello grandma, or teenagers hooked up together playing on the Xbox. We're all learning new tech skills, although I will admit to being the worst player on the Xbox ever, and my son would certainly agree. But still, what we long for is that sense of actually being collected together. Rainbow pictures in windows are appearing all over our town, and on my little Boris walk once a day, I've noticed hearts stuck to windows in rainbow patterns, teddy bears with rainbows painted by children. Grown-ups are starting to paint the rainbows now too, and people are putting candles and bears and pictures of hands waving in the windows, all to try and create this connectivity. I've got my fairy lights, my Christmas lights are still up. There we are, we've been having those on, and they shine out of the window once night time falls, and I do see people peering in and having a smile. Now, make no mistake, the wartime spirit was there because it was tough. And our collective memories kind of glamorise it just a little bit. The pain of separation was still there during the war. Evacuated children and their parents were left separated. In fact, here in Godalming we have some families who were evacuated here from London during the war and have stayed and are now in their 90s. Lovely people too. Children and parents were separated and could only communicate by post. The telephone was not for most people, and they had to rely on the postal service. And I can only imagine the pain of writing to a child and not expressing how lonely you felt without them, because you didn't want to upset them. So even the letters would have had brave faces in the words that people were sending to each other. The pain of separation of sweethearts, wives, husbands, loved ones, sending off their partners into war, into the nursing services, the ambulance services, land girls away from home, all of these people who were serving were separated from their families. People on the home front were working longer and longer hours away from their families in order to support the country's munitions and food, supplies and everything that we needed to get through as a nation. And then of course there was the grief of separation through loss, and more of us now know someone who has died to this disease, connected through our friends or our families, And it's starting to touch every home, this harsh reality of grief. And if you have lost someone, our hearts collectively, as believers, as friends, as non-believers, we are all together with you, eking you on through this awful time of grief and loss. People overcame the separation then with the wartime spirit, and we will overcome the separation again. And when we look back, we will recall the best parts. We'll recall the funny letters, the emails, the silly texts. I'm texting friends like mad. And all of those little things that we found to connect each other. We'll look back and be very proud of ourselves when we get to the end. And we must focus on getting to the end and remember that we will get there. We have within us a most tremendous ability to cope. Even if on blue mornings we don't feel as if we want to get up, and by the time we've watched the 6 o'clock news we don't even want to go to bed again, we still have within us the most tremendous ability to cope. The postmodern word is resilience. We are, as a people, tremendously resilient. And we are also, if you'll forgive the phrase, bloody minded as a nation. We can achieve anything that we set our hands and hearts to. We've known separation before, but we have known victory before. We have known separation and fear, but we will know victory again. For those of us with a Christian faith, we turn to the victory of Christ in times of struggle. We are reassured by Christ's suffering and resurrection that victory will follow the hard times. We are reassured that although we suffer for a little while now, we will be victorious. And although faith is sometimes tested, there are days that we think, oh, I'll pray all day. And there are days that we think, I don't have a single positive thought. But although we are tested for a while, we will know victory. Because Christ suffered a great deal. As we come up towards Holy Week, we remember his triumphs and we remember his suffering as he headed towards the greatest day when he rose again in victory at the resurrection on what we call Easter Sunday. Now, with COVID-19, our enemy is invisible, and its greatest weapon that I can see is this sense of separation. However, we will come through to victory together. We will get there. We will emerge and we will celebrate together. If our greatest weapon is to self-isolate, then we will do that collectively. You and I, friends, family, we will self-isolate the best we can in order to be victorious. We will protect our neighbours and protect our loved ones. And although we suffer a little while, we will know victory, just as Christ does. Be safe, friends. Put the kettle on and have a peaceful day. God bless. Bye-bye.